The size standard policy, basically, it is the rules that stipulate what is a small business in the federal marketplace.
A purpose of good size standards is to allow smaller firms to develop to a size where they can compete effectively with dominant sector players.
Obviously, the biggest challenge that NaFCA has right before it is the issue of this classification of this, what I call the glass ceiling for small business and doing business with the federal government, which is this glass ceiling is the size standards that exist, many of which are arbitrary, none of which are supported by statistics or empirical data, but rather supported by just an arbitrary decision to classify a small business under a certain dollar amount.
The way the structure is set up right now, it inhibits and punishes successful businessmen because it forces smaller businesses to compete with the very large enterprises, and it's almost impossible.
And this glass ceiling is suppressing and taking away the oxygen of the small business community as they grow and become viable competitors with these large corporations.
If you're going to be a small business accessing federal contracts as a small business through the small business set-asides, you have to meet those size standards. If you exceed those size standards, you're no longer considered small. So the problem is many size standards are too small and they graduate small businesses into the open marketplace too early.
Right now, small business size standards are so complex that no one can figure them out. No one understands how the SBA and the federal government and the Office of Management and Budget figured it out.
I think they're incredibly complex. You know, people think it's easy. You can just, oh, I'm a particular company, I can go figure out whether I'm small or not. But you know, looking at the size standards isn't the only thing. You have to look at affiliation. You have to look at affiliation cases. You know, it's a very complex question about whether a company is a small business, and it shouldn't be a complex question.
There's a serious inequity. There's a serious imbalance. And so the need for looking at policies like size standards is so important to get the administration, the SBA, OMB, Congress, and then ultimately, I guess, the Senate, to agree that it is an obstacle towards growth.
Every company started small some time ago. And as these companies grow, unless you have real opportunities to compete in a fair and equitable manner and then keep growing, you will be limited in your potential and then you may go out of business.
That is not good for the country. It is not good for the country to lose of its industrial base the capabilities of the small business community.
The economy has grown. The federal contracting system has grown, yet size standards have not grown.
There needs to be a reform in the size standard policy.
We have an administration, Obama administration, has come up here and said that they're looking to do size standards reforms. So let's try to hold them to it. Like they said, that without proposals, they don't feel like they have to do anything. I think we have to really make them work hard and put forward some real viable proposals so they can actually react to them.
It's time to take action. It's well past time to take action. And by getting industry to work together, we have a better opportunity to take action.
I think the National Federal Contractors Association is taking an approach that is not just complaining about the conditions, but actually doing something about it, presenting solutions.
Just to focus on the issue of size standard. And what is the end product? The end product is just to provide the government a total solution, not just a comment on a little bit part of a regulation that they're proposing and all that, but a total solution that is designed by us in the private sector.
This is not just going to be input from you that's put into some book that goes away and no one ever looks at it. It will be analyzed. Our office will be looking at many of those comments and regulations and trying to push forward appropriate solutions.
The whole idea of what we're trying to do is to change the size standards so that it will give a gradual slope of companies to build their employment up before they have to compete with the much larger companies.
The size standard was 25 million, you're now at 40, boom, you're out of here. This kind of a tiered approach really allowed for small businesses to not only grow, and they could bid up.
Instead of setting a size standard, why don't you set parameters based off of what the customer's trying to bid?
If we change the size standards to give it more gradation and allow a company to grow to a size in an incremental way and allow them to have some protection in the small business set-aside world, that'll strengthen the small business community and it'll strengthen our economy.
NaFCA is a platform to make that change happen, and it's also a catalyst to make it happen in a faster manner.
It's an attempt at its best to address a market imperfection. The market imperfection is that certain dominant firms can control contracting opportunities, can create barriers to entry by smaller firms. And that makes for a stagnant sector, less innovation, less efficiency.
They need to recognize that if you're going to have a successful trajectory for a company going from small to other than small, that you're going to have something that helps them along the way, other than just being a micro business and suddenly you have to compete with very, very large companies.
If you're a small business and you participate in small business set-asides, that affords you an opportunity to compete for contracts with other firms that are similarly sized to you. But if you are ineligible to participate in those set-asides, then you're competing against very, very large businesses, mid-sized firms, or you're not competing at all. So it will help those firms if the size standards are increased. If the size standards are decreased, then more firms would fall into that no man's land where it's very, very difficult to survive.
So you have to look at it, what is the kind of seeds that we plant in reforming these policies that indeed is going to work for the government, for the taxpayer, and for the business person, okay, over the next 20 years.
The small business size standards are defined based on the whole economy. How the government operates is very different from how the other parts of the economy operate. So today, the challenge and the opportunity that we have as a group of small businesses to help the government is to find ways to come up with the right policies so that small businesses that are helping the government solve these problems can be creating more opportunities for competing in a fair and equitable manner, and then continue to grow and continue to create more employment. And that's what this whole thing is all about.